Nate Sanel was on our show about a year and a half ago, and he had a very different perspective than he does today. Before, he was talking about all of the pre-owned that he sold and the certain manufacturers that he was in business with. Today, he has a very different tale, very different story, and has gone a complete different direction. And I think everybody's going to have a really good time on this take that he has. Stay tuned for Nathan Sanel. This is a show for anybody that has something that they want to say. It's going to be full of people with a lot of energy, CEOs, OEMs, vendors.
Best practice ideas in this industry and of neighboring industries.
We're talking to people that are on the cutting edge of processes, management.
Serial entrepreneurs, authors. We really have a feast of all different types of senior level people.
A cornucopia, as it were.
A plethora, maybe. Grab a pen, grab a cup of coffee, and have a seat. Start writing. This is GarageCast.
GarageCast. Welcome to GarageCast. It's a weird industry out there, dude. It's a weird industry out there. It's a very weird cruising into 25. So this is being recorded last day of Feb. Tomorrow starts March 1st, big time March. Let's get out there and crush it and see what's shaking.
Tony, I tell you, I got a Sea Ray Marine group coming in next week, right? And it's probably one of my more communicative groups in between meetings. And to your point, The weirdness, when I solicited hot topics, I don't know that I've ever gotten that many hot topics back for our pre-agenda on day one, because to your point, it's an odd environment. There are a lot of what ifs and a lot of fingers pointing out. And as you know, we've been trying to refocus them on pointing the finger in, but certainly this guy's going to help us navigate through the water today.
Yeah, totally going to navigate through the water. On the heels of the survey that we did of our membership, which is going to be a podcast in and of itself. And we're going to spread that information throughout the industry about, profiles and stocking levels and flooring and so on and so forth. There was, like you, my 20 clubs this round of the winter round spent less time looking at the numbers because, a lot of the times we were just like, well, okay, we know what the numbers are. It's not like we need to go rehash 2024. Same thing. We would spend first day, if not day and a half, talking hot topics or what's shaking out there. And very interesting topics, which I think you as well. It is the topic of conversation, which is the amount of stuff I have on my floor, the amount of money tied up into the actual units, mutually exclusive from the flooring costs that I incurred throughout the year, plus inventory now pouring onto my floor because it's March, right? So, I mean, that
tariffs or scare of tariffs, right? I mean,
scariffs.
Just lay them on top of each other for sure.
Yeah. So about, 6-7 months ago, it was right before summer, I believe. Guy by the name of Nate Sanel, who we've had on the podcast before. Very few second timers on the podcast. Nate, thanks for being back on with us.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. So you reached out and you're like, hey guys, I got a story to tell. You guys may want to talk about this on your podcast. And I'm not going to give away what that story was. Both Sam and I were like, well, that's super compelling. That's a very interesting topic. And you are right. We finally got through winter and the season and we wanted to bring you on pre-spring. So thank you so much for joining us. And I guess let's just kick into it. And that is that you're one of the few return guests on the podcast. And for those that have forgotten or have not listened to the first podcast episode number, Dancer, do you have that episode number? What number that was?
I don't. I had it teed up just yesterday, but it was 2020. Nate's got it. See, I listened to it, and then Nate came right back to me, and he's like, "Yeah, well, I read the transcript.
Yeah, I got it. I got my own podcast
I still
number.
Got it open. It's episode 131.
It was
January. Oh no, that's the last time I played it. September 6th, 2022.
2022, September 2022.
6th. So yeah, 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
So for those that have not listened to that episode, probably go back and listen to that first. Press stop right now. Go listen to Nate's, because we had him on because of your auction prowess, right? And then the dealership came after that. But clue in our listeners back to who you are, kind of what you do, and then we're going to hit you with a second question of why you're back on the show.
Okay. All right. So as you said, my name is Nate Sanel. I am the founder and the owner of National Powersports Distributors and the CEO and president of Bank My Bike. So National Powersports is our retail front, and Bank My Bike is the company that works with dealers to help them take in trade-ins and keep them safe so they don't end up with bikes on the floor that they're unfamiliar with and they've put the wrong price in. So sort of two sides of the coin.
Yeah.
For what we do.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit deeper about that in case dealers don't know what those are and what those offerings are. How can you help the listeners today?
Okay. So as far as dealers go, probably the most interest in doing anything with us would be with Bank My Bike. And what we do is we're a buyer's guide that writes checks. So our expertise is pre-owned. It's what we do. It's what I started doing, and it's the only thing I ever planned on really doing. So after 23 years, we've got quite a process down and quite a lot of data on the market, the used market, the pre-owned market. So National Powersports is the retail side that sells all these bikes. Bank My Bike works with dealers through either a web form or through a dealer desk to basically share with you what the market is for that bike you're thinking about trading in, give you a number that we think is a solid wholesale number that you could put on it, and we back up that number saying if you don't want it, we'll write you a check for it. So that's how those two things work together.
Let me ask you on the backside of that. MotoMate does a similar thing. Tom O'Connor with MotoMate, right? And you guys have been doing this for a while here, and I like the fact that not only will you give them a number, you'll come behind and buy it. But what other differences or nuances between the two are there?
We haven't used MotoMate, to be honest with you. It's not one of the softwares we use. We use one of their competitors, but I have been talking to them because one of the things that MotoMate has is they have a button for you to be able to get a quote from NPA, and we're talking with them and some other companies about a Bank My Bike button as well. So it's just one of those projects that we're working on. MotoHunt is a company we've gotten pretty close to. Jacob, one of the owners, is really involved with this industry, so he's a great guy to talk with. And we're looking at putting a buy figure button on their software as well right now.
Let me hit you with
the difference is the MotoMate and MotoHunt are designed for the dealership, but you still have to kind of make your way and understand that data and decipher through it. With us, you're really almost like getting a free buyer, a very experienced, actually a couple very experienced buyers for the opportunity, in exchange for the opportunity for us to buy those bikes that dealership doesn't want to keep.
Right. And for those of you just listening, or for those of you who didn't listen to the first podcast, again, that was episode, what did we say? September 6, 2024, you're 137? Is that
131.
131. Back in 2024, just go to our old, or 2022. Wow, I got all those wrong. Make sure to go back in there and you'll hear Nate's history about how he got to be a bike buyer and how different it is, the information that they use to assess the bike. And that's kind of part B to my question, which was you kind of disagreed with NPA. You're talking about having a button to get NPAs, but they give you a buy bid or they tell you what it's going for at auction. And you're like, yeah, but when and how long until it comes to auction? What are some of the other nuances between maybe the bid that you're seeing at NPA versus a bid that you would put up there?
I think it just comes down to how, there's a lot of similarities. NPA puts a direct buy bid, and then that's kind of it. That's kind of the end of your interaction from what I understand. And if you get in a jam or you need a little bit of more money, they tend not to work in that manner. They're much bigger organization. We right now work with about 2,000 dealers. I have no idea how many dealers they work with, but we're about 2,000 and we're expanding pretty rapidly. The difference is I'm not just buying bikes and helping dealers buy in that way. We help them with what we're seeing in the market. So having that retail side to the business and being able to understand, like we talked in the last podcast, NPA had said that, you really got to watch your turns, which is the best advice anybody could give right now. I don't care if it's new or pre-owned, you've got to watch your turns. And they had said something, I think Jim had said something about 30 days, and that's where I disagree with him. I didn't disagree with him, but I said, if you're really going to shoot for 30 days, there's a lot of other factors that you need to figure out, like how long does it take to get the bike to you? How long is it going to take you to prep it? How long is it going to take you to get it even in the service department? And then, of course, what prep do you do? Are you looking to retail at premium? Are you doing as is? So there's business decisions that the companies need to make. And I think we are a good reference for them as well. When it comes to, we also understand the retail side. We're not just buying bikes from them and taking them to the auction or doing something like that. We're retailing them.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
we just have a little bit different outlook on the entire picture.
Yep.
So then you said there's two parts to the piece, right? The Bank My Bike and the National Powersports auction. I'm looking at or distributors. I'm looking at what is this 7? Where I just had the number sitting right here in front of me. How many bikes do you have up there? I think it was 750. It just flashed up on the screen.
Yeah, that's what's visible. That's what's available right now. I have more than that. I usually have probably another 100 more than what's on the website at any time that are in process.
721. I see it now. 721.
Yeah, I think we have more than that in stock right now. We were bumping 1,000 units, about a month and a half ago between our two stores. We do have another location in New York.
Yeah,
and
so
is it
still go ahead, finish that.
No, I'm looking for more right now. We've been increasing our prices for the last month or so, and we're looking for more units because of the reason that we're going to talk about fairly soon. But we're looking actively and heavily to buy.
Hit him with 2. He's ready to go.
Well, hang on. I just got one more. I got one more follow-up question on that. You talked about your mix of Harley to metric the last time we were on this podcast and how it favors Harley. And I'm wondering, does it still? Are you still in that same mix?
Yeah. Yeah, it really, I mean, you get seasonal differences where you start to get some snowmobiles for a certain amount, short window. But it still seems to be the majority of pre-owned bikes in the market are Harleys. When I say majority, I would say it's at least 60-65% of every swing that we get is a Harley. There are a lot of Harleys out there, pre-owned Harleys.
Yeah. There's a whole nother conversation to be had.
Yeah, there is.
That's a different angle. But all right, Tony. All right, I'm going to get there right now. So a while ago, you wanted to discuss a major change in your business model, right? So you reached out to us. We had to get through. Tony made it known that we had to get through a bunch of our 20 clubs. But what's the major change? Tell us the genesis.
Oh, okay. You guys know I started doing pre-owned bikes, and everything that we've done, we've built specifically for pre-owned, which is really different than our industry. I didn't come into it thinking I want to be a motorcycle shop. I got thinking about how do I leverage this new technology like eBay and the web to create an easier way for a consumer to sort of guide their own purchase and make it easier for people to buy bikes, try to get around some of the stuff that was frustrating with buying bikes from dealerships, some of the tactics and stuff. And so as we grew with pre-owned. And then about 10 years ago, we always had a small brand like Kimco or something because we needed it for insurance. But our emphasis, we were always 90-95% pre-owned.
Explain that to me, because I don't know what you're talking about when you say you needed it for insurance.
A lot of insurance companies will not insure independents. Huh. You have to have a manufactured line, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But I don't know what they are. You got to talk to an insurance company for that. But it's pretty pervasive that when I first started, especially, I could not get Garage Keeper's insurance being independent. But it, for some reason, either gives you more credibility or removes some of the liability for the insurance companies because there's shared liability with the OEMs. So that was kind of the only reason I picked up. And I was always looking for little lines that were as close to like buying pre-owned as I could. I didn't want anybody trying to tell me what I can advertise it for, et cetera, et cetera. I want to do it like my pre-owned.
Got it.
But so about 10 years ago, we were approached by Triumph. And, it was different than every other OEM out there. In that, well, number one, I raced vintage bikes and just had a big affinity for the brand. So that probably made it a little bit easier to say yes. I was curious to see if all of this web stuff that we had done would translate into selling a lot of new, especially on a brand like that. And we found that it did. I mean, our second year as a Triumph dealer, we sold the most number of units ever sold by a dealer in 1 year. And up in New Hampshire, where it snows and we have seasonality. So I got to start thinking that we were pretty good at OEM. And we did okay with Triumph, as long as we played ball together. But then about 2 years ago, I wanted to expand, and I think we were talking about expanding. I was just about to buy this store at the last podcast. I bought a store in Coxsackie, New York. It's about 20 minutes south of Albany. And they had Polaris, Can-Am, Kawasaki, and Honda. Polaris, last minute in the deal, very last minute in the deal, decided to renege and say, no, they wouldn't let us be a dealer. And we were shocked. It was just months and months and months of work. And everybody at Polaris was super excited until it got up to the high end. And I think we had done some things in the past where we had bought some loads of, let's say, rental UTVs from Polaris dealers, and then we put them out in the market, and it pissed Polaris off to no end. So the other dealers complained, they're not a Polaris dealer, but these were all used. They were just pre-owned, but we were buying 70, 80 of them at a time. And so we were putting some really good deals out online. And somehow I think Polaris just got this idea that we were internet whores, and they got scared. The thing that frustrated me is that not one of the executives at Polaris would give me the decency of a phone call. It was shocking. It was literally shocking, because Polaris was 60% of the book of business for this dealership I was buying. And here I am in the last month, and they've been, I'll say politically correct. They had been stringing me along for a while, and then they deny me. And I was just like, I cannot believe this happened. So I went forward with the purchase, and I should not have. To be dead honest with you, I shouldn't have, because it was a huge amount of that value is just going to lose. It's 65% of the retail sales. So I moved forward with it anyways without Polaris. So what we opened with Can-Am, Ski-Doo, Sea-Doo, Honda, and Kawasaki. And then we brought in Surons, because we sell Surons, and then we loaded the place up. We didn't load it up, but we only had so much room. And we had millions of dollars worth of new bikes on the floor. And the first year in business, I got my ass handed to me. I mean, in a major way. First time I've ever lost money in this business. And it just kept pushing me to looking at the margins of the new and the aggravation I was going through dealing with all of these OEMs. I mean, I'm talking about a 2,000 square foot showroom and then a big, huge barn in the back. And every OEM wants 70% of my showroom and wants me to do a $50,000 upgrade. And I'm making nothing on the bikes, because we're now, last year solidly in a race to the bottom. And I'm sitting on 23s and 24s, just like everybody else. And I'm saying, this is not what I ever wanted to do. It doesn't make sense to me. You're talking about 120, 160 days on hand. You're talking 6 months on hand, at least. And then in order to get rid of them, you've got to discount them. And I know we can have that argument a million ways to Sunday, but that's, we're in the middle of the race to the bottom. Whether you appreciate my stance, is that what I had to do or not, doesn't matter at this point. So I'm starting to do the analysis, deep analysis, going, why am I doing this? So how much resources are we putting into these 5 brands, yet they represent a very small amount of my total sales. They represent really small amount of my profit. As a matter of fact, after the analysis, they represented a loss. And so I started to think, why am I doing this? And it's awful hard to look at millions of dollars worth of retail business and say, I think I might throw that away. It's really hard to go, okay, on the revenue side, you've got millions coming in, but when you do the analysis, it doesn't make any sense. And during this process, and this was the big thing I was hung up on. During this process, we compromised in who we are. The reason we got to where we are, selling thousands and thousands of pre-owned bikes a year, is because we tell the truth and we have a certain way of doing things. We don't charge any fees. Nobody here is on commission. We do everything wrong for this industry. Everything. We really do. Because I never looked at our industry as the way to do it. Now I find myself, all these years later, I'm entrenched in this industry. Now I'm trying to figure out how the company that doesn't have commission and doesn't have fees, how am I supposed to make any money on any of these things? Because if you take the fees out, you're cooked. And we did at the end, in order to move the inventory, we took out the fees and we end up with a negative 3%. You end up losing money on the bikes.
What? So you took out the fees. You're talking freight, setup, dock fees, like what those?
Well, setup, freight and setup, we had to. Well, no, setup we didn't. Freight we had to pass along. So this gets to my point, Tony. For years, I've been the company that doesn't charge fees.
Yep.
Except on these. Now, all of a sudden, I'm making compromises to my marketing and who I am. Now we're trying to sell new units and do everything like that, and trying to combat the dealers that are good at selling new units, who know how to make the profit off the return service and the parts. And we don't. We suck at it.
I do want to ask you a question. I do want to push back on one thing is
sure
that you went negative 3% on the units.
You got to understand what expenses I'm including in that in order to get to that.
Because we're talking to probably a dealer base that for years and decades actually makes more percentage on their units. So what I'm suggesting is I'm going to let you talk more about it.
No, let me expand upon that because it's only fair. Yep. I haven't operated for 10 years at negative 3%. I'm just talking what it took to clean myself out of this mess before I terminated with everybody.
Got it.
And what a terrible scenario it was in. We were typically making, let's say, all in with holdback on Triumph, 15 to 17%. So, I'm in line with everybody else. We weren't whoring this stuff out.
Got it.
But when the manufacturers have gotten to the point where, like, these Bajaj built bikes, we're making $600, and then you've got $800 in freight or whatever it is on top of it. If you don't charge every fee on top, you're losing money.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're compromising who we are, how we do business, what we stand for, and that really made me out of tune. I kept asking why. I kept asking myself, why? Where's the benefit? Where's the ancillary? Like, okay, we think if you sell Triumphs, it attracts another crowd that wouldn't have come in here, and that's good exposure. And maybe they have a family member that wants a pre-owned bike or whatever the case is. What we found over the years is we've gone from 350 a year to 300 to 250 to 125 or 150. But yet my stocking inventory is now 130 units on 150 sales. And no matter how many conversations I have with pick the OEM, you're spending all of your time battling with them. No, I'm not taking 6 red speed triples. I can't get rid of them. I know you can't either, but I can't either. And you're not going to put them on my floor plan, so I have to pay for them in 3 months. So all of these things I kept saying, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. This is taking us away from who we are. And I don't want to pick on Triumph. This is just representative of where my mindset was. But I will tell you the straw that broke the camel's back. And anyone that knows me in the industry that's listening, they've heard this story before because it was it. So we saw the Triumph dirt bikes years ago. They showed all the dealers some prototypes. I'm telling you, we were excited. This is so cool. Triumph's going to move into a new market. Dirt bikes and off-road are strong up here. This is going to be great. So a month and a half before we're supposed to get the bikes, hey, they're finally coming. We're going to be delivered in March or whatever it was. It was a very short period of time before we're supposed to get them. The national sales manager calls me and says, hey, I really would like to ship those bikes, but I can't. I'm like, what do you mean you can't? I think we had maybe a dozen of the 250s on order. And he said, well, you haven't ordered the display. And I said, yeah, of course I haven't ordered the display. I could give 2 shits about your display. I don't. Sorry, but I don't. I spend millions of dollars on my website driving people in there. That's my display. I don't. So I'm like, what is this display? It's the triangle display, and it has exhaust and helmets, and it's, branding the new bike. So they would not. Well, the first thing they tried to do is have sign a separate dealer agreement. You have to go through the process again. I was like, forget it. I don't care. I won't take them. Are you really going to make me sign up a new dealer agreement for this? And then I guess they got so much pushback, they pulled back on that. But they were adamant I had to buy this display. This display cost.
How much was it?
It was over $10,000. It was like $12,000, I think, with everything in, with the exhaust, the helmets. I mean, there was product there that I could sell, but the vast majority of that expense was this display, this 3-sided triangle display that had pictures of Triumphs on it.
Yeah.
And what's the margin on one of those bikes? $800 if you're lucky, on just the bike. So the entire first load of bikes was for Triumph profitability, not mine. And I could not talk them. I could not get them to see this. And I realized they do not care about my money the way I do, and I have no control over this. And I don't do business that way. It's not their money, it's my money. And the stupid thing is why don't you wait and see if I sell them before you make me buy a $10,000 display? And who's working at your company from 1985 that thinks a $10,000 display is going to sell more bikes? Okay, yeah. If you have a professional looking showroom, great. I get that. I don't want to be a slob and we want to represent the line. But if we're not making any money, there's some point you go, why do I do this?
So you're talking about that. You said it wasn't just Triumph. A lot of your example is Triumph. You had Skidoo, you had Sea-Doo, Kawasaki, and what else?
Honda.
I didn't hear that.
Honda, yeah.
And you were experiencing these same issues across all lines.
So I started. You end up becoming sort of adversarial. We started getting notices from Triumph saying that we're violating MAP by selling out of our New York store, which we never, ever did. I'm the problem child, and they started leaning on me. At the same time, Can-Am is telling me that I have to make the showroom a third theirs. And that was the reduced plan was going to be $35,000. And then Honda is telling me I have got to take, like, they're getting mad at me because I'm not taking CRFs where I've got leftovers, and they're mad because they've got this great promotion where you're giving out an easy up. And I'm like, you guys are out of touch, completely out of touch. And all of my time was spent on the phone arguing these people saying, you're not making me any money. You don't get any showroom space. As a matter of fact, I moved all the OEMs to back of the barn, and I filled the front of my building up with pre-owned bikes. And I said, if you guys... I did. You walk into that store that used to be all new bikes. You walk in, all you see is pre-owned. And now we carry 350 pre-owned bikes. And so I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
Suffice it to to say you're a street fighter and you were scrapping is what you were doing. There's a little messaging that goes along with putting all your OEMs in the barn. That's hilarious.
Well, the thing is, I did it all at once. I served notice to all of them, which was really stupid because it made it really difficult. There's a lot. When you terminate an OEM, there's a lot of work, and I made a lot of work for our guys here terminating 5 at once, you know?
So what ultimately decided was your decision to shed your relationships with the manufacturers? Was it the triangle sign or was it just an accumulated? Yeah, it was the display, or what was it that you said, you know what, I'm done?
I looked at the numbers over and over and over, and then I looked at them next month over, and then I looked at them next month. And then I thought about, okay, what is going on in this industry? Is this going to turn around? And I did not see any turnaround in sight for this at all.
In the profitability and numbers, or the adversarial relationship that you had?
The profitability. I mean, I can get around. I'm not the easiest guy to deal with, and I'm sure any of the OEMs listening to this would just spit out their coffee. I'm not. I'm fairly independent, but I didn't just burn the bridges down because they were difficult or I was difficult. I mean, you take a company, let's be fair, take a company like Kawasaki. They were great to work with. They totally understood. And Triumph understood why I made the decision. Rod completely understood, because Rod knows my business. He knows I'm selling thousands and thousands of pre-owned bikes and I'm selling 150 Triumphs. Which are you going to focus on?
Yeah,
and
sure.
So what eventually got me there is I realized I am sacrificing my focus to be the best at what we do already, better than anybody else, and advancing that. And that is the thought process here. When things get tough, if there's something you're good at, you better lean into that and take and focus on that. And you can't focus if you're doing a bunch of other things that are taking more of your time, are less profitable, and just, it's, the saying, the juice ain't worth the squeeze. And I just came to that conclusion. I said, this is going to hurt, but I got to rip this Band-Aid off.
Well said, by the way. We call it the shiny new toy. People get excited and they're like, oh, what if I took on that line or that industry? We got Harley guys taking on Marine, and all of a sudden they're like, maybe I got in over my head and shiny new object. But that had to be scary, yeah? That had to be like was it peaceful, or was it like, oh, here we go?
It was not peaceful at all. It was, and I created a lot of tension in our shop here because we were talking about it with our managers for months. And honestly, I was really trying to get more feedback from my managers about how they felt about it. And finally, my ops manager just pulled me aside one day and said, dude, make a decision. We're with you. Just make a decision. Let's go. And I needed that, and I was like, you're right. We've got to do this. I'm afraid to do it because like I said, I'm giving up millions of dollars in revenue.
Yeah.
But every time, who cares? If you tell me, hey, I can help you sell $10 million worth of shit, but you're going to lose $1 million. I don't think you'd say, hey, that sounds like a really good deal, man. I think I will do that. I think I'll open a brand new building for that. I'm like, no, I will not.
So Nate, what are, if any, the benefits of being under the banner of a manufacturer signage? Do you find that there were any good things that came out of having that? Because
sure.
Yeah.
I think it depends on your business. If you, we didn't start off trying to be a motorcycle shop. So to jump into that world took us out of what we do. But if you want to open a motorcycle dealership, the amount of money we've spent and time on building our own software, on doing our own advertising, on promoting our company. I don't have help. I don't have co-op for that. I don't have a bunch of, corporate ad people who know how to push the right buttons and get this message in front. We had to learn all of that independently. But if you have no desire to do that, that was organic with me for growing our business. But if I was going to open a dealership today, you need their resources. And obviously you need something to sell. So, the quality of the product is important. And that wasn't my problem with any of these brands. It had nothing to do with that.
Well, it's interesting. You talk about that sign. I've seen that sign. I've seen the Triumph sign. And the dealer that had that Triumph sign said, this motorcycle, this dirt bike, this Triumph dirt bike is the best motorcycle that nobody's buying right now for whatever reason, right? So and it's not the sign, right? Sign is just the reminder and the thorn in your side. It's amazing how many good products out there aren't moving for a myriad of reasons. But if the business model doesn't work relative to the number of units you're taking in versus what you're selling, then it's never going to work, no matter how much you love the brand.
No, think about this. Okay, if what we're experts in is inventory management. You cannot be an expert in inventory management if you can't control pricing or your inventory levels.
Yeah, can't control the inventory coming in. Yeah, right. It makes total sense.
And let's say for whatever reason you ended up with too many units of the wrong color and the wrong model, whatever. You can't do anything about it for that entire year. Sure, you can play some of the tactics that all the dealers know to get around it. Warranty register it and then sell it as it just barely used. Everybody knows the tactics. It sucks that anyone even has to do that. Yeah. But, I wish the OEMs would think about, look, if the dealers have to do that, then maybe we should look at a different way of doing this with the dealers. But that's a whole nother conversation.
So how long, when was this that you finally said, all right, that's it, pulled the Band-Aid off?
August 1st. August 1st was the day we became completely OEM. Well, I shouldn't say OEM-free. We're still working with a couple OEMs like Suron and Kayo because they're easy. And I can do what I want because I write them a check, buy the inventory. And, my goal isn't to discount stuff. But if I make a mistake on inventory and it doesn't move in 60 days, I want it gone.
Yeah. Well, the obvious question is, how are you now? How's the business now? And do you have any regrets? No.
Okay, I'll give you a little microcosm idea. Our New York store had $2 million worth of total inventory, most of it in new. Okay. Yep. The January previous to this year, so 24, I think we sold 35 bikes, majority being new. And obviously in January, you probably got a pretty good idea of what our profitability was. It was nil. This January, we sold 100 pre-owned bikes at 3 times the margin.
Wow.
Same shop. Now, obviously, there's advantages of being part of this company. Like a branch location of ours gets a lot of benefits because the process that we have that works for both stores and what we do with the bikes and how we move bikes to their store and how we do store transfers, that store can sell out of the total 800, 900 bikes and we'll just transfer it to the other location. So we gave that place an immediate advantage over what they were doing before. And they were nervous. The salespeople that had been there prior and stuff were really nervous because it's all they knew. And they are so psyched now. They're so on board. And the company feels like National Powersports again. This is what we do, really narrowly focused. And so now we're working on raising the bar on ourselves. We know people look at our stuff and they copy our stuff all the time. And so what we're doing is we're working on a couple super cool projects that are going to even be more transparent and help customers get the information about the bike that they're looking at. So that's what I mean by doing the thing that you know how to do. Now, all of the stuff that we were doing for admin of all the new stuff, we can use that time and those resources to focus on improving our company and our processes.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my next question. You just answered it, which is the business model as far as your day-to-day ops and admin. How is it different than with or without the OEMs? And it sounds like you've kind of already answered that. It's a whole different pace in how you operate. But anything to add to that?
Yeah, we were trying to stuff the OEM methodology into what we do. And that was the distraction. So now that that's not there, now we're, have the foot on the gas for the stuff that we do and the way that we do stuff.
So I think we can all agree that used bike buyer is a different breed than the new bike buyer or new power sport buyer, right? So how's the demographic or clientele change? Did you just go back to the clientele you had before, or was it always there? And now any changes in that respect?
It doesn't seem to change at all. I think the people that would come to us for our new bike also just loved coming and looking at the pre-owned. I mean, when you walk into the location in New Hampshire, you walk in and you just stop at the door and you're stunned because you walk in and it's this 50,000 square foot warehouse with bikes as far as you can see. It's super cool. And so even if you're looking for a new bike, coming to look to see maybe there's a 1-year-old model, nice clean one that I can save myself $5,000-6,000 on. Even new buyers do come in because the other thing is someone might be curious to see how like these 5 bikes feel on when they're sitting on them, and whether or not they buy new or buy from me, we're a great resource to come in and see what might fit you. And if we can't, if buying a used one and we don't have the right used one for you, we still provided you a service. You're still going to come back and remember that, that this is a cool place to go to. There's a ton of people that come here every week just to look at the bikes.
Well, just on your website right here, all of the pictures are taken very professionally, the front wheels and the wheel chalk, good lighting all the way around them. So it's a fun place to shop it just online. I can imagine walking into a sea of 700 motorcycles. Holy cow.
I kid that the best commercial we have, we should put a camera up on the front door because everybody says, holy shit. When they walk in, everybody stops and goes, holy shit. It's the funniest thing. It's the same thing every time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hey, what about the hottest models out there, Nate? How do you find those for your customers? Maybe the newest, hottest, greatest thing, or are you looking to switch them, or you're just confident in saying that is not our demographic. We're never going to try and compete with that. Like, what about the hottest, greatest things out there?
We don't, when we buy, we don't look specifically for something. Yeah, of course, maybe say, okay, I'll give you an example. Right now, Sportsters are hot. I don't know if everybody knows that, but older Sportsters are really gaining in value because the new ones are so expensive and the changes. People want a cheap Harley. So now all of a sudden, Sportsters are worth more than they were, a year ago. And am I going to buy every one I can find? Absolutely. But what happens is, the wholesale division, the dealers that we work with, we're buying the bikes that they either can't sell within the time frame they need to, whether they didn't price it right, market it right. That's not, it could be a million things. I'm sure I lost my train of thought. The flow of what we buy really comes down to, we'll buy anything to do with power sports because we know what the retail market is on anything. We have a lot of tools. We know regionally. We know like what's going to sell more in a New York store versus here. And then we know nationally, where the interest is. But it tends to be kind of organic, what we buy from the dealers, as long as we buy at the right price. We have such a gigantic marketing arm and the website gets so much traffic. It comes down to pricing it appropriately more than trying to buy the right unit.
Let me take a subset question of what Tony just asked you, because what we've seen coming out of MIC, certainly for the last couple of years, some of the cool trends is adventure bikes continue to explode. Dirt bikes are back in play, like competition dirt bikes, which is young, hopefully young new riders coming to the scene, and sport bikes have been on the rise as well. And so are you looking at segments differently than you were before, or is it just kind of whatever's available, find the right number, put it on there, and let's get it up on the website?
That's the latter.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
I mean, open.
Yep. Yeah, it's wide open. It's, you get lucky, you get home runs where you might buy a sport bike for what the book says, which we all know is way wrong. And then you hit a home run. But, those things, demand just is like a school of fish. It flows all over the place and you can watch the trends. But since we're buying from dealers, that's where the trends show up. So, if Harley or somebody comes out with a new model that everybody wants, those dealers are going to sell a bunch of those and they're going to trade in what they bought last year or the year before, and we're going to get those. So we usually will be a year or two behind unless something was a massive sales flop, like live wires, things like that. The pricing for live wires just dropped to the floor because the demand wasn't there. And as you're asking me this question, I'm thinking, just comes down to supply and demand. You said dirt bikes are up. They were really up during COVID and we're seeing them cool down, but I can't help wondering if the reason why dirt bikes are up so much is because it's not $11,000 anymore for a late model 450. Now you can get one for $7,000. You know what I mean? Or, and there's the dealers have priced them so much more competitively that there's more of them getting out in the market. So I don't know which is pushing which lever.
And is the Suron really getting that new buyer to your door to keep them in the loop? So you've got a lot of them on your site.
Well, what the cool thing about Surons is, well, number one, I took them on because I'm obsessed with them. Like I've been racing them and I absolutely love them. They're some of the most fun I've ever had on two wheels. I love that they're quiet. I can ride them in the woods. It's like a mountain bike with a motor. They're just awesome. So when you have somebody that works in the dealership that's enthusiastic about something, it makes it a lot easier to sell. We all know this. So that was a little bit of a pet project of mine. Plus, it fulfilled the need of having an OEM. But they're growing and growing. And the most exciting thing I think about Surons, if we were having this interview 5 years ago, we would have been talking about how there's nobody entering the market anymore. Everybody's a baby boomer and they're aging out and they're all buying Harley trikes and kids don't care anymore. They want to play video games. Well, COVID changed that and the kids want electric bikes. I mean, they want the Surons.
Oh my God, do they ever? You got kids that are junior high up in my hometown screaming all over town on those.
Yeah.
Ripe to get run over by a truck, but for sure. And it's like a mountain bike.
1975 all over again. It's like the moped thing all over again.
It's a fast moped, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like, again, and how do you train your people to have, because obviously you're not doing all the buying, but how do you train all your people to have the sniffer to know, man, that's a deal right there. And it's funny. There are people in this industry. It's the people out there that carry that book in their back pocket and they are ready to buy right now. No matter, tell me what it is right there. I'll tell you the price. And I know for a fact I can make a quick $3,000 on that right now. Man, that's a science, right? And an art form too. Like, how do you drip that down into your people so that it stays viable?
You don't let everybody do it. That's the thing. My sales managers don't put numbers on bikes. My buyer does. So our stores use Bank My Bike just like another location. So you're talking about what tools do my buyers have? How well trained are they? And then what is our company initiative about what sort of margin and turns we are looking to achieve? So once, my head buyer, Ben, he's been doing this for years. But he started doing sales. So he's intimately familiar with what we do and what is a home run here and what we call wheelhouse bikes, if that's one of our wheelhouse bikes. But I don't allow just anybody to put a trade-in number. And I don't allow the store managers to price the bikes either. That in that sense, we act like the OEM for my branch locations. We will provide the marketing, the pricing, the buying. You just sell it. You just fulfill the promise of making it easy for someone to get it from us.
And again, I think you've covered, but I'm just making sure. You see a great deal on a jet ski, a side-by-side, a snowmobile, like name it. You just know that it's a deal and that it'll eventually sell through your marketing efforts. Not that, man, we don't touch dirt bikes. You just know that dirt bike will sell in this market if we market it correctly.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
so
cool.
What's the thing in the industry? Here you are. I'm sure the manufacturers have a unique perspective on you, Nate. But here you are, this used bike guy that played in that space, and then you're like, screw you guys, I'm going home.
Unique perspective, dude. There's gonna be people in SUVs outside in black ties, just waiting, like following Nate home.
That's right. Well, we heard you got our stuff in a warehouse in the back. I need to get out there.
Could you hop in this car really quick, please? We just need to have a little talk.
So, just no.
My question is, what's the thing that dealers should be asking themselves that maybe they're not even aware to be asking themselves? I don't know what that is.
I think I touched on it earlier. What are you good at?
Okay.
What are you good at that you're not putting your foot on the gas with? Like, what is distracting you from being better at what you're good at? Because I think there's, and I know from your guys' perspective, it's kind of a difficult conversation because, like, if I had a really good, strong, profitable parts and service department, it would add a lot to my bottom line. It really would. And, we didn't talk about, like, what happens to your F&I revenue when you lose all the OEMs, because it does go down. And we anticipate that was one of the things trying to analyze how much money are we going to lose in F&I. And we've taken a bath there, to be dead honest with you. And we're regrouping and trying to come up with some better ways of doing it for pre-owned.
Is that because of interest rates or just banks not extending as much on the pre-owned?
Yeah, and you lose resources. You think about some of the resources that are available for you for finance, let's say Synchronicity with Kawasaki or whatever, you lose that ability. So even if those companies have a pre-owned program, if you're not carrying their OEM brand, some of them, you can't have access to them. And one of the things I'm trying to do, we're at a level of pre-owned bikes as we can usually get their attention to work with us. And so, but that can be one of the downsides.
Nate Sanel, man, good stuff. It's an interesting take from a completely different angle, but very well spoken, and I think this will be a really, really good episode. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on. I appreciate the follow-up.
Yeah, for Nate Sanel and Sam Dantzler, I'm Tony Gonzalez. This has been GarageCast. Have a fantastic Tuesday, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.